Hello, everyone. Welcome to 10 Minutes Astrology, the most easy way to learn astrology. I'm Rod Chang.
And I am Alejo Lopez.
I
Welcome,
like your
everyone.
glasses.
Thank you.
So,
Very serious matter, so yes.
oh, yes, I should get the same pair and look more smarter. Well, today we're going to talk about something very unusual and very different because most beginner will not know the differences between the retrograde and the stationary. But while learning the horary astrology and traditional astrology, I noticed there is a different way to judge the stationary planet and the retrograde planet. Also, I think because my background, I'm into mundane astrology and the financial astrology. In these two areas, a stationary planet has a most powerful meaning than the retrograde time. So,
Mm.
so I'd like to trace a little bit about stationary planet. So, well, Alejo, could you give us the meaning of the
Yeah.
diagram? Yeah.
So the planet is moving, let's say Mercury. Let's take
Hmm.
Mercury.
Hmm.
So he's moving forward in the zodiac, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's at 0 degrees of Gemini, let's say. Then he goes to 1 degree, 2 degrees. And we
Hmm.
start noticing that he is starting to slow down. So
Hmm.
he's doing, let's say, 0 degrees, 1 degrees, 2 degrees. And the next day, instead of getting to 3 degrees, he goes to 2 degrees and 50 minutes.
Hmm.
And the next day, 2 degrees, 40 minutes. And
Hmm.
the next day, 2 degrees, 20 minutes. So he's becoming slowly, slowly, slowly. And at some point, he becomes so slow that what we see in the sky is that he's stopped in the zodiac. It looks like he's not moving.
Mm.
And after that, of course, he starts a retrograding motion. So after that, he starts going backwards.
Mm.
So this is just like if you throw, this there are these pendulums that you have a ball and it goes on the pendulum.
Yeah.
When it
Yeah.
goes to the middle part, it goes very fast, and when it
Yeah.
starts to go to the edge, it starts to slow down. At some point, there's a point in which
Aye.
it kind of stands and then it goes back, right?
Aye.
So
Yes.
that instant in which the body is like about to change direction, that is the moment where a planet is stationed. It means that it's changing direction either to become retrograde, or it
Mm.
also happened in the other direction, right? When the planet is retrograde, let's say Mercury is retrograde, so we see it's
Hmm.
at 250 and it starts
Hmm.
retrograde. So it's 240,
Hmm.
230. Then it starts moving fastest. It starts moving a
Mm.
little bit faster. So from 230 goes to 2, then 150. It starts moving faster, faster. And then at some point, it starts to slow down again. Even if it's going backwards, it starts to slow down. And at some point, it looks like it stopped. And that's
Mm.
when it changes direction and goes back to
Hmm.
direct. So
Yeah.
a planet is considered stationed when he's on a place in the zodiac in which he's about to change direction. So from the sky, it looks like it has stopped. And of
Mm.
course, depending on the planet, for how long this happens. For a quick
Yeah.
planet, this happens is very brief. But
Mm.
for planets like Pluto or Neptune, the stationing moment can last days.
Yes, yes, that is very interesting way to define because for the like Alejo say for Mercury, it sometimes just lasts for 1 or 2 days, and longer time maybe like 3 days. That's too long for Mercury. For Venus, Mars the same, but for Pluto, it could really stay there nearly 1 week, nearly 1 week, and Neptune is there. So that's why mundane astrologer, when we discuss about the world event or the geopolitical or economic situation, we usually focus on this kind of outer planet when they change the direction. But today we focus on the natal chart. So if you have planet in the stationary, that is very interesting. But usually the software will not tell you. Some software will not really tell you unless you check the ephemeris, the date is changing. So now we're going to learn how to use ephemeris, okay? So to find out the stationary planet, and I will give you a interesting, a more clear guideline how to define it. So let me share my screen. Here I'm going to astro.com. Here I'm in astro.com. When you hit the
Mhm.
astro.com, you will go scrolling down. You will have the Swiss ephemeris, and then you go to the year you were born, like 19th century, and then you go to like a 1999 or something. Okay, I'm not that young, so I use at least years example. And I mean, in the August, we already talking about in August and the early of September. There's what? How many planets went retrograde? And it's like drive people mad. People are talking about so many planets retrograde. Okay, here we are. So let's look. Let me make it much larger. So we can see on the Mercury on the 24th of August, Mercury is located at 21st degree Virgo, 51 minutes. As Mercury move very fast, so we will consider when Mercury stay in same degree, is already a slow motion, super slow motion. So we will consider the day. We examine what day, what degree it went retrograde. Is at 21. So the day Mercury reached the 21 degree, can consider it's stationary until it moves out of 21 degree. But not every astrologer agree with this. Some, like for the software, they like a mathematical method. So they use the average moving rate, like something like move less than 5%. That, that, and unfortunately, software usually don't mark that stationary for your birth chart. So some software does, some software didn't. So you have to learn how to find it. And I was interesting. I find that my own birth chart has a stationary planet, which I consider it was a no retrograde and a no stationary. I saw it was in direct motion. That was my Saturn. Yeah. So you have to go to examine the chart. But I think for the outer planet, you use minutes. But it's very difficult, like because you use minute, not degree. Because if you use degree, that will whole year.
It's gonna last forever. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for Jupiter, Saturn, until Pluto, you use minutes. Okay. When it moves this the minute, that is a stationary planet. Today I use the example, and me and Alejo are quite surprised about this person. I mean, it's a very, very famous astrologer. It's my idol, to be honest with you.
This is your idol.
That's why he's my idol.
That's why.
That's why. Yes. When I say I want to show what's a photo chart, you say like,
No, I like him, but I don't think I like him. I mean, he was really, he's really good. I've read all of his books, not all.
Yes, and I don't know why I
very
was like,
yes.
I think really the God of Change. That is a great book when you learn astrology, especially when you learn outer planet transit. Oh my God! When I read that book, I was like, I want to become an astrologer like him. I want to as a knowledgeable, as a wise like him. And I find out in his birth chart that Jupiter was about to change the direction at 28 degrees Sagittarius. I don't know if this chart is valid, but I know I get the resource from another software, and this is Howard's Porter's chart. But look at that Jupiter already. Jupiter in Sagittarius.
Yeah, fantastic.
That is very, very Jupiterian, very kind, generous, and more kind of very inclusive and with a big heart, and a very positive view to see this thing. But when he focus on the God of changes, the God Jupiter, and then when they change the direction, he was focus on them and write a book about transiting Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, and become one of the most important modern astrology book to talk about transit. And that is kind of a meaning. He used the meaning and the mythology, and the go with a very big psychological meaning about all these planets. I was just like, I was so regret I wasn't into astrology earlier and learn from him. I don't know why, but yeah, that is like a very interesting, that stationary Jupiter. Stationary is very easy to interpret, because when we talk about the retrograde planet, there is a lot of meaning. You move backward, you go different way. But with the stationary planet, it is difficult to define it. You have to go through the ephemeris to find it out. But how to define it is not too difficult, because stationary planet is has only one meaning: focus. It's just a focus. It's not because it's not moving. Well, in a traditional way, yes. That's another way to delineate about a stationary planet in the chart, especially in horary. There's things getting better or getting worse. But I think in the modern astrology, the stationary means focus. So if you have a planet is stationary, that doesn't matter good or bad. It's just because you are so focused on one thing, then the other things will have to go around with this, with focus on, like he's focused on philosophy, mythology, and everything else will go around, will work with this idea about this is what I'm focused on. So that was very interesting, and that when I find out I have a Saturn in the stationary, I was laughing, because I was just like interesting that at the same time another colleague just say, I never see someone when talk about a event will be in the organic way, and with a lot of details, say, and I will need this, I will need that, we need this, and we need that. I give a list, and then we just like, when people invite me to talk, they just say, do you have time to talk?
Nice. I'm curious to know what if I have any stationery.
Yeah, it is not. It is very interesting, because we usually we will not notice it, but when you realize it, you just like, oh, that would be interesting to know, and that is kind of especially if you don't research it, if you just look chart, it doesn't show. Yeah. Well,
Nice.
so this is how I'm going to share the little secret about, this is the secret power. I call it secret power. And because it usually don't show unless you go to find out. And when you find out, you just like, no wonder I'm focused on that area. Okay, well, thanks everyone for watching and listen 10 Minutes Astrology. And we'll, once a week, we'll bring you something very, very interesting to help you to learn astrology. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.